with insulin to keep the sugar levels down. But listen to this. If they don't take in carbohydrates, which are basically sugar, they don't need insulin. Because there's enough insulin in their body. What happens is when you got too much sugar in the form of carbohydrates, you get insulin resistance. And you can see in this diagram, is this you? You know, fatigue, constant hunger, inability to lose weight, cravings for sugar, fatigue after meals, migrating aches and pains and headaches, abdominal obesity, increased fat storage, high cholesterol and triglycerides, low thyroid, estrogen dominance, hormone imbalance, polycystic ovary syndrome, aches, facial hair, infertility. You know, men and women both suffer from the ravages of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates cause a spike in insulin secretion and increase cravings and increases stores of fat. Low carbohydrates reduce calories by reducing your cravings for foods. And the reason that it does that is because fat, it has what they call satiety. It gives you satisfaction. It gives you a feeling of fullness. You're not suffering hunger pains. You know, carbohydrates are not essential elements in the human body. You can live without carbohydrates, but you can live without protein and fat. Look at this diagram. Eat real fat to promote fat burn, build muscle faster, curb cravings for junk food, supply your body with essential nutrients, better absorb certain vitamins and antioxidants, and prevent nutrient loss during cooking. You know, what these foods are basically eaten raw. Raw shrimp, lobster, avocado, coconut, cheese, nuts, almonds, a salad. Less processed food in your diet is the way to go if you really want to conquer the struggle of weight loss. As your insulin resistance increases, your body weight increases. Your body can't handle the increase of carbs and stores the excess as fat. You're taking in a lot of carbs, which basically is nothing more than sugar. The body turns the food you take into sugar. The insulin tries to control it. Your body needs at least 4 hours to adapt to the reduction of carbs in your diet. This is a very important point. I should have made this more prominent. When you start on a high-fat, low-carb diet, you're going to go through a withdrawal, just like you would if you were a drug addict or an alcoholic. Because basically, our drug of choice is food. And the food is giving us our high, which is the sugar high, that after an hour, we're starving again. Burning fat instead of carbs will increase your energy and endurance levels. What you're doing is you're forcing your body to use the stored fat, not the fat that you're putting in with the carbohydrate, by removing the carbohydrates. You control a food intake by the brain. You have to use your brain and realize that low fat is not working. And high carb diets, which the FDA was pushing for many, many years, and they never had research to prove that hypothesis that was true. So now we're realizing that it's carbohydrates, the sugar, that sugar's everywhere. The other day I was in a supermarket and I was looking for pork rinds, which I made a video about earlier in the week. Not one supermarket carried pork rinds, which are 0 carbohydrates. But do you know how many thousands of bags of potato chips and pretzels and fattening things full of grain and flour products? There was all over the place because there's a high profit in that kind of food. What has the low-fat, high-carbohydrate done for obesity and diabetes of the world? There's been an epidemic of obesity thanks to a low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet that's been pushed on us for 20, 30 years. You will enjoy the foods because fat tastes good and is a tasty diet to follow. You can eat well and not suffer from hunger or ill nature like when on a restricted caloric diet. On this plan, you don't count calories. You don't take a fistful of this or a measurement of that. You eat until you're not hungry, because you're not pushing bad stuff into your body via carbohydrates. In fact, here I have the cover from Dr. Atkins' Diet Revolution, and Dr. Atkins had it almost right by restricting carbs, but his pushing protein over fat made his diet not as effective or as enjoyable. You know, you should have a restricted amount of protein, because protein produces a lot of bad things in your body besides giving you the nourishment, but too much protein is bad for you. While there's no negativeness to fat. If you do some research more than what I'm giving you, you'll see that I'm right. Take the negative press about coconut oil or butter, for instance. We were told that both were harmful to our health. The food industry jumped right in on it and created margarine, which was loaded for trans fats, a truly unhealthy fat for our bodies. Look at what the FDA told us about eggs, how they are now they are saying that it's perfect food. Look at this picture: bacon and eggs, cantaloupe, a breakfast that your grandma ate for years. And they say, oh yeah, but they were dropping dead. They weren't dropping dead from that. They were dropping dead from smoking. That's what they were dropping dead from. They weren't obese because they were physically active. So when you look at this new paradigm, and that's the word for it, it's a paradigm that it's carbohydrates that's causing the obesity, not fat. For a very long time, fat had a bad reputation. We were told many times to avoid it at all costs. We all opt for skim or this or low fat that, and fat was kicked to the curb. Now it is being reported that fat is no longer evil. In fact, look at this picture of the New York Times saying, eat butter. Scientists labeled fat the enemy. Why they were wrong. Saturated fat found in foods like red meats and other rich protein sources actually increases free testosterone levels that help repair tissue and maintain muscle mass. You know, as I was telling you about that girl in the bank, when I said eat more fat, they were, ooh, that's going to make you fat. But that's not the truth. Carbohydrates make you fat. Insulin makes you fat. There's no insulin reaction to fat when it enters your body. Current research is suggesting that low-carb diet should be the first treatment option in diabetes because of the consistently good control of blood glucose and reduction or elimination of diabetes medication. It is the eating of so much carbohydrates causes us to become obese and deficient in insulin and become insulin resistant. A meal that's relatively high in carbohydrates will produce very high glucose levels, and this is the cause of our obesity problem. Look at the famous story about you go to a Chinese meal or a Chinese buffet, which I used to do every Friday for years, and an hour later or two you're starving. That's famous, and the reason why is because all that Chinese food is based around rice. You know, everything goes on top of rice. And it's that rice that turns into sugars in your body that causes the spike in insulin that an hour or two later you're starving. Here's a diagram of the new way to look at the food pyramid. You should have eat the fat, grass-fed pastured, real butter and cream, coconut or olive oil only, lobster, fish, eggs, pastured beef. These are what you should be having more of in your diet. Do you see any bread, cookies, cakes, or candy in this diagram? If you want to lose the weight and die young at a very old age, this should be what you're looking for. Make fat 40% of your diet, protein, and then add about 10 or 15% of carbohydrates in the form of leafy vegetables, fruits and nuts. And nuts is also a thing that's got a bad rap. When you go to eat nuts, I'll give you a secret. Get a handful of nuts, put the jar away or the can, and walk into another room. Once you finish that handful, you're done. The other thing I added the other day on one of the other videos about the lunch is that you could buy whole milk heavy cream, whip it up, and make your own whipped cream at home, knowing exactly what's going into it, and have that with a dietary jello, and you'll have a great dessert without a lot of hassle. Please share this information